As investors and builders in the AI space, we are just getting hammered with noise. It's constant. And honestly, the conversation needs a better mental model for business and investment strategy. Because chasing the wrong metrics in this market, that's not just a bad idea, it can be a fatal mistake. We really need a better framework.
Okay, so let's start with the problem. Right now, the entire discourse around AI, pretty much all of it, is dominated by one specific, very exciting question, but a question that's starting to feel more and more narrow.
You hear it everywhere, right? In every boardroom, on every podcast, all over social media. The question is simple. Who's winning the big model horse race? Is it going to be OpenAI or Anthropic? Is the US going to pull ahead of China?
But here's the thing. From a business perspective, from a value capture perspective, this is just not the most useful question anymore. The market is already moving on. Focusing on who has the smartest model completely misses where the real defensible value is being built. All while the value of that raw intelligence itself, it's already being competed away. So this brings me to a much more powerful way to think about the AI value chain. It's an analogy I heard from a fellow VC that just immediately clicked for me, and it really reframes the entire landscape.
It's simple, isn't it? AI is the new oil. But the real power of this analogy is in the details, and trust me, the implications for those of us building and investing here are profound. So let's unpack this. Here's how it works. The big models, from OpenAI, Anthropic, or any of the open-weight projects, they produce raw intelligence in the form of tokens. Think of that as the crude oil. But here's the key. Your customers don't buy crude oil. They buy gasoline. They pay for a refined, finished output. The legal work that gets completed, the code that actually ships, the insurance claim that gets processed. And that gap between the crude and the gasoline, that's everything. We call it the spread, and it's the absolute core of the refinery business model. Real value isn't just in making the crude, it's in capturing the arbitrage between the low cost of raw tokens and the high price customers are willing to pay for that finished, valuable product. So for any AI company you're looking at, the fundamental question isn't just, hey, how good is your model? It's how wide is your spread and how defensible is it? This is the metric that truly matters because that spread is the business, period.
Well, this, of course, raises the billion-dollar question for any operator or investor, right? Once you find a profitable spread, how do you protect it? How do you build a real moat around it before it gets competed down to zero?
From what I'm seeing in the market, there are really three primary moats an AI refinery can build. The first, and maybe most important, is owning the workflow. The second is all about accumulating proprietary context. And the third is operating in markets with some kind of structural advantage, things like high regulatory barriers or unique data access, which creates limited competition. Let's dig into the first two because they're the most common. Okay. The most powerful moat, by far, is workflow ownership. When your product gets deeply embedded in a high-stakes workflow, I'm talking about medicine, legal, finance, it becomes incredibly sticky. The conversation is no longer about whether some other model is 5% cheaper. It's about the massive costs, the enormous risk, and the sheer disruption of trying to rewire an entire enterprise operating system. The second big defense is accumulated context. And look, this is not just about clever prompt engineering. That's a temporary edge, at best. This is about proprietary data that makes the product indispensable over time. We're talking years of customer records, prior work product, compliance history, all that institutional memory that a generic model just can't get its hands on. This idea of accumulated context is so important that it's actually changing how we talk about these companies. For the longest time, any app built on top of a base model was just dismissed as a wrapper, a thin, easily replaceable interface. But now we're seeing the rise of the harness. A harness isn't some simple layer, it's a system that takes raw power and controls it, directing it through deep contextual integration. That's the difference context makes. And the great thing is, we don't just have to sit here and theorize about this refinery framework. We can actually see a preview of the future by just looking at what's already happening in China, where the crude oil of AI has become incredibly cheap really fast. So, take a look at this. Right now, the US market still supports two pretty distinct profit pools, one for the model layer and a separate one for the application layer, the refiners. But China gives us a preview of what happens when that model layer gets commoditized. Really strong, cheap, open-weight models have basically erased the premium for crude, forcing all the value and all the competition downstream into the refinery, into that application layer. I used to believe that in AI, the dish was only as good as the fish. But China is proving that's not always true. What happens when the fish isn't rare anymore? When high-quality crude is just everywhere, the game totally changes. The value shifts completely to the skill of the chef, to the quality of the refinery.
The lessons from China are absolutely critical for everyone in this space. First, cheap crude doesn't kill the refinery business, it actually makes it boom. Second, the basis of competition shifts away from raw performance and towards superior product and distribution. And third, as those spreads naturally get thinner, operational excellence becomes completely non-negotiable. And let me be clear, this isn't some regional trend, it's a preview of what's coming for all of us. So let's bring this all home. We've gone from the raw token to the refined product, and we've seen how this is already playing out in the real world. What does this actually mean for how we should be evaluating the market from this point forward?
It means the old paradigm is obsolete. The ground is literally moving underneath our feet, and if we want to find durable value in this new era, we have to start asking a fundamentally different question.
Here's the entire shift in one image. We have to stop asking who has the best model, and we must start asking who owns the workflow. This is the essential move from a technology-centric view to a business-centric view. It's the move from the oil well to the refinery.
So, I'll leave you with the one question that should drive every single investment memo and product strategy from here on out. Forget the raw intelligence. Focus on where that intelligence is refined, embedded, and made absolutely essential, because that is where enduring value will be captured.